Don't check his room tonight, she told me. Yet she slipped inside the moment I closed my eyes. I didn't breathe a word, but something about the way she moved made the house feel less like a home and more like a place someone else was already living in. I only realized what that feeling meant when I replayed the footage and saw what the camera saw behind me. Before we go deeper, hit subscribe for me. These true marriage stories survive because of people like you. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read them all. Don't check his room tonight, she told me. Yet she slipped inside the moment I closed my eyes. I didn't breathe a word, but something about the way she moved made the house feel less like a home and more like a place someone else was already living in. I only realized what that feeling meant when I replayed the footage and saw what the camera saw behind me. Before we go deeper, hit subscribe for me. These true marriage stories survive because of people like you. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read them all. I used to think a father could recognize every sound in his own home. The soft hum of the fridge, the uneasy shift of the hallway floorboards, the gentle creak of my son's old wooden bed. But that night, those sounds felt different. They didn't feel like memory. They felt like warning signs I'd ignored for too long, like a language my house had been whispering to me for months while I told myself everything was fine. My wife thought I had fallen asleep early. She stood at our bedroom door for a long moment, as if waiting for my breathing to settle. I kept it even, steady, a little lower than normal. She didn't notice the tension in my jaw or the way my fingers curled into the blanket. She stepped away from our bed quietly, the way someone moves when they're not supposed to wake the person beside them, not out of love, but out of fear of being caught. Her silhouette passed the dim glow beneath the hallway light, and instead of heading toward the kitchen or bathroom, the way she used to on restless nights, she turned left, toward our son's room. That was the moment something inside me tightened. A father knows when a boundary has been crossed, and a husband knows when a secret has just walked past him. I waited 5 long minutes. My heart counted each one. When I finally stood up, the air in the doorway felt colder than before. I walked into the hallway, expecting to hear murmurs, whispers, something, anything. But the house was too silent, and silence is rarely innocent. The glow from under my son's door flickered, then steadied, as if someone inside had moved in front of the lamp. I took one step closer, then stopped. Something in me hesitated, not out of fear of what my wife might be doing, but fear of what I might not be prepared to see. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. She'd always been protective of our son, maybe too protective. Maybe she was checking him, comforting him, sitting by his bed, the way she used to when he was small. But he wasn't small anymore. He was 17. He didn't need someone tucking him in at midnight. He didn't need whispers behind closed doors. And he certainly didn't need secrets between his parents. Still, I didn't open the door. I just stood there, swallowing the truth that wouldn't form words yet. I eventually returned to our room, but I knew sleep wasn't coming. So I did something I hadn't planned. Not really, not consciously, but maybe my heart had seen this coming long before my mind accepted it. I opened the drawer beside my bed, pulled out the small black camera I'd bought the week before, and placed it quietly behind a picture frame facing the hallway. I told myself it was paranoia. I told myself I'd delete whatever it captured. I told myself I trusted my wife. Lies we tell ourselves often sound like comfort. But that night, they sounded like surrender. The camera blinked once armed, watching silent. And for the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't alone with my suspicions. Morning came slow, with a heavy gray that pressed against the windows, as if the sky knew something I didn't. My wife acted normal, too normal. She hummed faintly while pouring coffee, the same tune she used years ago, when things were simple. She didn't look at me the way she usually did after a restless night. No tired eyes, no slouch in her shoulders, just an odd calmness. Our son came downstairs late, looking pale, distracted, almost jumpy. He didn't look at his mother. She didn't look at him. And somehow, that was worse than anything I had imagined. Rough night, I asked him lightly. His spoon paused over his cereal. A moment too long. A breath he wasn't expecting to hold. I'm fine, he muttered. But he wasn't fine. And neither was she. People think marriages break with shouting, slammed doors, and confessions under pressure. But it doesn't happen like that. It breaks quietly, through glances, hesitations, and the way two people can stand side by side yet feel like strangers, separated by something neither of them can name. My wife touched his shoulder as she walked past him too gently, too slowly, then quickly pulled her hand away as if she remembered I was in the room. My son stiffened, like he didn't know whether to lean into it or escape from it. That one gesture told me more than any words could. I didn't confront them, not yet, because I finally had something I hadn't had in months. A way to see the truth without it breaking me before I was ready. When they both left for the day, I went upstairs. The hallway was quiet again, but now the silence felt different. Less like a warning, more like an invitation. I picked up on camera behind the frame. My hands trembled, not because I feared what my wife might be hiding, but because something inside me whispered I had gotten the question wrong. Maybe the real mystery wasn't what she was doing inside our son's room. Maybe it was who else had been there with her. I connected the camera to my laptop, the screen lighting up like an eye-opening. I hit play. For the first few seconds, nothing moved, just the empty hallway, the faint light beneath the door, and my own shadow passing through the frame earlier. Then something else moved. Something behind me. Something I didn't see when it happened. And when the playback froze on that moment, that shape, that presence, my breath caught in my throat. Because whatever stood behind me in that hallway wasn't my wife. I replayed that frame 3 times, each pass slower than the last. hoping the camera had caught some kind of shadow distortion, maybe a reflection, maybe a glitch. But glitches don't have shoulders. They don't shift weight from one foot to the other. They don't tilt their head toward you the way a person does when you're too distracted to notice you're being watched. I stared at the frozen shape behind me, breath stuck somewhere between my chest and throat, trying to understand how something could be so close, yet completely unseen. It wasn't my wife. That was the first thing my mind accepted. The shape was broader, higher, still. Not the kind of stillness that comes from fear, but the kind that comes from waiting. A presence that didn't belong in a hallway of family photographs and quiet memories. A presence that should never have been there in the first place. The timestamp on the footage blinked in the corner, accusingly normal. 1:12 a.m. That was the same minute my wife had slipped into our son's room. The same minute I'd walked past the hallway, heart pounding, thinking she was the only one out of place. I didn't realize someone else had been standing behind me. And the strangest part, when I stepped through that hallway in real time, I felt nothing. No movement, no breath, no shift of air. The house had wrapped me in the kind of silence that hides itself behind familiarity. Now it felt like that familiarity had lied to me. I let the video run past the frozen moment, hoping the shape would move again, hoping it would step forward, walk away, disappear, anything that resembled a human action, something explainable. But it didn't. It simply remained in the far left corner of the frame, outlined by faint hallway light, as if the house itself had taken a breath and held it. And then just before the timestamp changed from 1:12 to 1:13, the shape leaned forward by an inch. Not toward the camera, toward me. I stopped the video immediately. My hand hovered over the trackpad, fingers trembling. I wasn't sure if it was fear or anger or the cold shock of something I couldn't name yet. But I knew one thing: if something had been standing behind me, it had been doing so intentionally. My instinct was to go downstairs, confront my wife, right then demand answers. But suspicion is a terrible, louder-than-life voice. It tells you to react before you understand. And whatever was happening inside my home, I needed clarity, not conflict. So instead, I went back to the hallway at that exact hour the following night, 1:10 a.m., then 1:11, then 1:12. Nothing. The only sound was the faint hum of the thermostat and the quiet rustle of night settling against the windows. There was no shape this time, no presence, no hint of anything except the memory of that frame burned into my mind. But my wife, she moved differently that night. She lay in bed longer before getting up. Her breathing wasn't steady. It was sharpened by anticipation, as if she was waiting for something to happen, something she expected, something she had adapted her nights around. She rose at 1:14. Instead of slipping out quietly at midnight like the night before. And when she reached our bedroom door, she didn't pause this time. She walked out with a strange determination, like she'd already made up her mind. I gave her a 10-second head start, then followed, careful not to let the floorboards betray me. The hallway felt colder than it should have. Not freezing, not supernatural, just what? Wrong. Like someone had opened a window hours earlier and forgotten to close it, leaving the air unsettled. My wife reached our son's door, placed her hand on the knob, and hesitated. Not like she was afraid to go in, but like she was afraid someone might be watching. She wasn't wrong. She entered the room, slowly closing the door behind her, with that same muted click I had heard the night before. I stood outside the door again, just like last time. The light underneath flickered again, but this time the flicker didn't feel like movement. It felt like communication. A signal. The way someone might flash a light to let another person know it was safe to approach. This time, though, it wasn't safe. I stepped back, needing air that wasn't trapped in that hallway. I went to the camera, not behind the frame now, but directly in front of it, adjusting the angle slightly to catch more of the left side, where the shape had appeared yesterday. My fingers shook too hard to hide it. I clicked the new recording on. A red dot blinked silently. Then footsteps behind me, very soft, very controlled, walking exactly the way someone would if they didn't want to be heard. I swallowed, forcing my body not to turn around instantly. If I turned too quickly, whoever or whatever was behind me would know I knew. So I waited, just 2 seconds, 2 painfully long seconds. Then I turned, so steady. Nothing. The hallway was empty, but the air behind me was cold again, as if something had just been there, somewhere inside that thin slice of space you can't see but can feel the moment it slips away. I returned to the camera, stopped the recording, uploaded the footage to my laptop. This time I didn't wait until morning. I hit play immediately. The hallway appeared, still ordinary. The glow beneath my son's door wavered like a candle in a room too full of breath. And then a soft shift in the left corner. Not a full shape, not a body, just enough movement to tell me one thing. Whatever I'd seen the night before wasn't a glitch. It was a pattern. And patterns don't happen by accident. I leaned in closer, eyes narrowing at the frame. The shape was there again, less defined, but unmistakably present. Then something new happened. As my wife closed the door behind her, inside our son's room, the shape in the hallway, the one behind me, turned its head toward her door. Not toward me, not toward the camera, toward the room she had entered. And that was the moment I realized my wife wasn't the only one visiting our son at night. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I didn't even sit down. I stayed in the hallway for almost an hour after the footage ended, staring at the same corner where that shape had appeared, where it had turned its head toward the room his wife had walked into. There was no reason for anyone to look there. No window, no vent, no movement. The only thing behind that door was my son. And maybe that was the part I kept avoiding. It's strange how a house can feel familiar for years. Then suddenly, every inch of it becomes foreign, like someone rearranged the air without touching a single object. I walked back and forth between the two rooms, my son's room and mine, and each step made the floor creak differently, as if the house was trying to tell me something I had ignored for too long. Why was my wife going into his room at night? Why was she whispering behind closed doors? And who or what was turning toward her. I liked to think I was a reasonable man, a patient man, someone who didn't jump to conclusions just because life became uncomfortable. But nothing about this situation felt like discomfort. It felt deliberate. It felt rehearsed. It felt like I had been the only one left out of a conversation happening right in front of me. When morning came, my wife slipped into routine again. But this time her movements were too careful. Her eyes stayed on the coffee on the stove, on anything but me. And when she finally looked up, it wasn't the look of someone hiding guilt. It was the look of someone holding fear too tightly, afraid that if she let it go, it would run straight into my hands. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked. I watched her face. Every muscle, every blink, every hesitation. "Fine," I said. She nodded a small relieved exhale, escaping her lips, like she had been waiting to make sure I didn't know something. My son came down. Minutes later, same pale expression, same rigid posture, same refusal to look at either of us. But I noticed something new this time, a faint red mark along the side of his neck. Not big, not obvious, but enough to raise questions I wasn't ready to voice. He grabbed his backpack quickly. "Heading out early?" I asked. "Yeah," he muttered, adjusting the strap too fast, his hand shaking slightly. My wife stepped toward him, too fast, too needy, too desperate. "Do you need anything?" she whispered. He shook his head, not at her, away from her. I watched that small moment, that tiny recoil, and realized something I had refused to admit. Whatever was happening at night, my son was not on her side. He left the house without looking back. My wife stood at the doorway a few seconds longer, staring after him with a silence that didn't feel maternal. It felt grieving. After she left for work, I replayed the footage again, not because I needed confirmation, but because I needed to feel the truth break in slow motion instead of all at once. The shape was clearer this time. Not enough to identify, but enough to know it wasn't a trick of the light. The way it turned its head wasn't random. The movement aligned perfectly with the moment my wife opened the door. It knew she was there, and she didn't react to it at all, not even a flinch, which meant one terrifying thing: she wasn't afraid of it. I sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on my knees, the camera still warm in my hand. I told myself I needed to stop this before it escalated, but something deeper told me that whatever was happening had already escalated long before I started noticing. Maybe months ago, maybe years, maybe the moment my son began acting like he lived with two parents who no longer shared the same truth. I decided that night I would stay awake. No pretending to sleep. No waiting for her footsteps. I would follow her. Not through a lens, not through a playback, but in real time. That was the plan. But plans only work when the people involved move predictably. By 12:45 a.m., my wife still hadn't shifted in bed. She lay, stiff eyes open in the dark, like someone waiting for a signal. Once or twice, she glanced toward the door, as if expecting someone to walk in. As if she wasn't the one who needed to leave, but the one being summoned. At 1:07, she finally sat up. No hesitation. No slow rise. She moved with purpose. I waited until her hand touched the doorknob, then I stepped out of bed, not to follow her, But because I realized something chilling, she wasn't going toward the hallway. She was waiting for me to be asleep. Then she glanced back at the bed, at the shape of my body beneath the blanket. And only when she was convinced I wasn't awake did she step out. I wasn't supposed to be awake to see her leave.
Why?
I followed her carefully, but instead of walking toward our son's room, she walked straight past it. She didn't turn her head, she didn't slow down, and she didn't even look at the door she had been entering the past 2 nights. She kept walking until she reached the end of the hallway and stopped in front of the attic ladder. The same attic we hadn't opened in months. She placed her hand on the pull cord, frozen for a moment, as if listening for something on the other side. Then quietly, with a gentleness that didn't match the weight of the moment, she pulled the ladder down. A soft thud echoed through the house. Not loud, not alarming, just enough for a patient listener. Then she climbed, one step at a time, slow, controlled, practiced. She had done this before. I stayed in the hallway, heart pounding in my ears, staring at the open attic above me. The moment the top of her head disappeared into the darkness, something else happened. A faint shift of air behind me. Not cold, not warm, just presence. The same presence from the footage. I didn't turn. Not yet. Because the attic ladder still trembled from her ascent. And something inside whispered, if she isn't visiting our son tonight, then who has been waiting behind his door? I stood there, staring at the attic opening above me, trying to process the footsteps I had just heard. My wife wasn't moving quietly. She was moving deliberately. Each step sounded like someone who already knew where to place their feet, to avoid making too much noise, but not because she was hiding from me. It felt like she was hiding with something or someone. The ladder shuddered once more, a soft vibration through the wooden frame. Not from her weight, from the shift of someone else, already up there. Someone she was joining. And suddenly I realized something that should have terrified me more than the shape in the hallway, more than the camera footage, more than the idea that my wife had been lying to me for months. She wasn't afraid of the attic. She was afraid of me knowing about it. I stayed still for a long moment, listening to her movements above. A faint shuffle of boxes. A tiny click, like a cabinet being opened. Then, silence. Not the silence of someone pausing. The silence of someone talking in whispers too soft for the floorboards to carry. I strained my ears, nothing. But silence can tell you more than sound ever will. And the silence above me wasn't empty. I looked down the hallway toward my son's room. The door was closed, light off, nothing out of place. For the past 2 nights, I had been convinced that she had been visiting him, checking on him, comforting him, or confronting him. But now I understood the truth. She hadn't been going into our son's room because of him. She had been going into our son's room because it was the closest cover. And the person she needed to reach wasn't behind that door. It was above it. The air shifted again behind me. A quiet pressure. A sense of space rearranging itself. That presence. The same one from the footage. The same one from the night before. The same one that moved only when I wasn't looking directly at it. I clenched my jaw and looked over my shoulder slowly. Nothing. The hallway was empty, but the feeling remained. Not danger, not malice, just presence. like someone observing me the way you observe a stranger in your own home, not out of fear, out of recognition. But recognition of what? I looked back up at the attic opening. The edge of the frame cast a shadow on the floor, like a jawline stretching across the hallway. A line I had stepped over countless times without thinking. Now, it felt like crossing that line meant leaving the version of my life I thought I understood. I placed my hand on the letter, testing it. The wood was cold. Not attic cold, colder, as if someone had been touching it with hands that didn't hold warmth. I climbed one step, then another. The third step creaked a long, tired groan, like the wood remembered a secret it didn't want to share. At the fourth step, something happened. My wife's voice, not loud, not startled, just pleading. Don't! One word, choked, not a command, a warning. I froze, one hand on the ladder, one foot suspended in the air. Don't, she repeated softer this time, like she was crying without letting her breath shake. I couldn't see her from this angle. She was somewhere in the attic, hidden by darkness, by Mars, by whatever else was up there. I didn't move. I didn't answer. I wanted to hear what she said next, not with anger, not with suspicion, but with honesty. She was scared, would break something. You're not supposed to be up here, John. My name cracked in her throat. Not because she feared for herself, because she feared for me. But fear of what? Fear of who? I climbed one more step. The attic floorboards shifted, not near her voice, to the other side, away from her. Someone else was up there. A slow rustle. Something brushing against a stack of boxes. A footstep measured and soft, but heavy enough to be unmistakably human. I tightened my grip on the ladder. Who's up there with you? I asked. Voice low. Silence. Not denial. Not shock. Not confusion. Just silence. The kind that confirms a truth without speaking it. She exhaled shakily. I had heard her breathe through anxiety before, through stress, through arguments, through moments when she didn't want our son to know. She was barely holding herself together. But this wasn't any of those breaths. This was the breath of someone making a choice between two people she cared about, and knowing whichever one she chose, the other would be hurt. Please, she whispered. Not like this. My heart tightened. Not like this. What did that mean? The floorboards shifted again, this time closer to her. Not toward me, toward her. Then her voice trembling, not with fear, but with something closer to resignation. I'll come downstairs in a minute. Just go back to bed. She was trying to protect me. From what? From who? I climbed one more step, the last one, before my head would break the plane of the attic. John, stop. She rarely used that tone. It wasn't anger. It was the tone she used the night our son came home shaking after a fight at school. The tone she used when she held him tightly, whispering, "It's okay," even though she didn't believe her own words. Protective. Desperate. Terrified of the truth. I paused, half of me wanting to pull myself up, the other half realizing that whatever was happening up there wasn't just hers to explain. The presence behind me thickened. Not sound, not touch, just weight, like a thought becoming a shadow. I glanced over my shoulder. Still nothing. But the camera had seen it. And the camera didn't lie. I looked up into the darkness where my wife waited, waiting for me to choose trust over clarity, safety, over truth. "Tell me who's up there," I said quietly. She didn't answer. But someone else did. A soft, controlled exhale. Not hers. Not mine. A third breath in the attic darkness. So close. It felt like it belonged to someone who had been living in my house longer than I realized. I didn't move for a long moment after hearing that breath, soft, controlled, unmistakably human. It drifted down from the attic like a confession, no one intended to make out loud, threading itself into the air between my wife and me. My hand tightened around the ladder's rung until my knuckles whitened. Every instinct I had as a husband told me to pull myself up the rest of the way. Every instinct I had as a father told me not to. The house felt like it was holding its breath with me. My wife's silhouette shifted in the shadows above. Not away from me, but slightly forward, like she was trying to block someone else from stepping closer to the attic opening. Even in the darkness, I could sense the tension in her posture, the way her shoulder rose protectively, the slight shuffle of her foot as she repositioned herself. "John," she whispered again, voice tight, "please, just go downstairs." Downstairs, not back to bed. Downstairs, away from the attic, away from her, away from whoever was up there. I swallowed hard. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me the truth." Silence. Then another breath from the far side of the attic, deeper this time, controlled the way someone hides the sound of moving. Not panic, not guilt. Something far more practiced. My mind raced with possibilities I didn't want to entertain. An intruder. Unlikely my wife wouldn't protect an intruder. A friend. Impossible. No friend hides in an attic at 1 a.m. Family. But we had no family who would break into our home and move silently through the night. Unless they hadn't broken in. Unless they had never left. But even as the thought formed, I rejected it. Not because it couldn't be true, but because if it were true, then everything I believed about my home had been wrong for a long time. I inhaled slowly. "Who's up there with you?" Her answer wasn't spoken. Instead, I heard her exhale, long, trembling, as if pushing the words out without letting them take shape in her mouth. A sound of surrender, or fear, or both. Then she said something I didn't expect. "It isn't what you think." I hated that sentence. Every man who has heard it knows why. But the way she said it wasn't defensive. It was pleading. Begging me to understand something she couldn't explain yet. "What is it then?" My voice came out quieter than I intended. "Tell me." Again, she didn't answer. But the presence behind her moved. A shift of weight, a faint scrape. Someone adjusting their stance the way a person does when deciding whether to reveal themselves or disappear deeper into the dark. I felt that shift like pressure in my chest. And suddenly, I understood something terrifying. "Whoever was up there didn't fear me discovering them. They feared what would happen if my wife let me discover them." I took the final step, lifting myself just high enough for my eyes to break the plane of the attic floor. The darkness swallowed most of the space, broken only by a thin line of moonlight leaking through the small roof vent. Boxes stacked to one side. Old holiday decorations, a dusty suitcase from years ago. Everything looked normal, exactly the kind of clutter anyone would expect, except for one thing. A corner of the attic near the insulation had been cleared, not fully just enough to create space for someone to sit or kneel. And the dust patterns around it were disturbed recently, repeatedly, like someone had been spending time there, waiting. My wife moved quickly, blocking my view. "John, please don't." There it was again. That word she kept returning to. Don't. Not stop, not go back. Don't. A word used when someone knows an action can't be undone once taken. "There's someone up here," I said quietly. Her jaw trembled, and then finally she nodded. Not a full nod, just the slightest dip of her head. But it was enough. My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to pull myself up fully. Another part felt frozen by the look in her eyes. Not guilt, not fear of being caught, but a kind of protective panic I had only ever seen when she held our son during his worst nights. I whispered, "Who?" "Who?" She opened her mouth, but before the words came out, something to her left shifted again, more pronounced, this time. Heavy, intentional. The attic boards creaked softly, under the weight of someone repositioning themselves. My wife tensed, and then, startling both of us, a quiet sound drifted from the darkness. A soft, strained whisper. Not a word, just a breath with the shape of a voice in it. The sound of someone trying to speak, but unable to. The hair on my arms rose. My wife instantly turned toward the sound, panic flashing across her face. "Don't," she whispered sharply, not to me, but to the person hidden in the shadows. That one word told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't controlling the situation. She was trying to prevent it from falling apart. I felt the attic air thicken the way tension fills a room when something fragile is on the verge of breaking. My heart hammered in my chest. The shape in the corner leaned slightly forward, still cloaked in darkness. My wife took a step toward them, blocking my view again. "It's okay," she said softly, the same tone she used years ago, when calming our son after nightmares. "Just breathe. Don't move." "Don't move." Why? I pulled myself 1 inch higher. Her head whipped toward me. "John, no." It wasn't anger. It was fear for me. And in that moment, something dawned on me. Whoever was up there with her wasn't threatening her. They were threatening me. The whisper came again, closer. This time, not fully formed, not fully human in its restraint. A voice trying to hold itself together or hide itself or push words through something broken. My wife turned back to them, pressing her palm to the air like she could stop the moment from happening. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here. I'm right here. Just don't let him see you yet." Yet. Not ever. Yet. And the attic, for the first time since I entered my home, felt truly alive. With something waiting in the dark. Something that recognized me the moment I stood on that ladder. Something that had been closer to me these nights than my own wife. A truth forming, breathing, shifting, preparing. And as I stared into the darkness beyond her trembling silhouette, one realization chilled me to the bone. This wasn't the first night someone else had been living above my house. I stayed there suspended, halfway between the hallway and the attic darkness, unable to move forward, yet incapable of stepping back. My wife's body blocked most of my view, but not all of it. I could still see the faint outline of that cleared corner, The disturbed dust, the indentation on the insulation, the unmistakable signs of someone spending more time here than should ever be normal. Another soft whisper came from the far side of the attic. Not words, not breath. Something caught between the two, like a voice that didn't know how to form sound anymore. The kind of sound a person makes when they want to speak, but the world has forgotten how to listen. My wife turned sharply toward the darkness, hands raised in a gesture I had only ever seen her use once, years ago, when she held our son after he woke up screaming from a nightmare he couldn't describe. Her palms were trembling. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "It's okay. I'm here." She wasn't comforting me. She wasn't confronting them. She was holding the moment together the way someone holds a fragile object they know will break if touched too suddenly. "Who's up there with you?" I repeated more firmly this time. She didn't answer me. She didn't even turn her head, and instead she took a slow step toward the hidden figure, as if worried they might fall, or fade, or vanish into the dark before she reached them. Her shoulders curved inward, her breathing shallow, her posture protective in a way I had never seen her direct at anyone, except our son. The silence stretched. I shifted 1 inch higher on the ladder. This time, she reacted instantly. "John, stop." Her voice cracked so sharply it startled the attic air. "Please, not another step. Not another step." "Why, what would happen if I did?" I kept my voice steady. "Tell me what's going on." "You can't be here," she whispered. "Not like this." There it was again, not like this. Always that phrase. As if there was a right way for me to discover the truth. And this wasn't it. The presence in the corner moved again. A slow, deliberate shift, like someone repositioning themselves so they wouldn't be seen. Or so they could see me better. I froze. The attic boards creaked under their weight, the same weight I had heard in the footage. A familiar rhythm, a human steadiness, but practiced the way someone learns to move in a space that isn't theirs anymore. My wife whispered, "Don't come closer. Please, John. He's not ready."
Hey.
She had finally said a pronoun. My stomach dropped. The attic blurred for a moment, the edges of the moonlit beams smudging together. I wasn't sure if I had misheard her, or if my mind had latched onto the word too quickly desperate to attach meaning where there wasn't certainty yet. But I knew what I heard. I knew that word. He, someone male, someone she was protecting, someone she didn't want me to see. "Who is he?" I asked quietly. She flinched at the question, a small involuntary jerk of her shoulders. Not guilt. Fear. Not fear of the truth. Fear of how I would handle it. "I'll explain everything," she said, voice trembling. "Just not here. Not now." Her foot shifted anxiously against the attic floor. And then the voice from the corner tried again. A small sound trapped behind breath. A sound that wanted to be a word, a name, something. My wife's head snapped toward the shadow instantly. "Shh, it's okay. I'm here. Don't force it." Force it? A strange phrase. A phrase mean for someone struggling. Someone whose voice wasn't working. Someone who couldn't speak properly. Someone she had talked to before enough to recognize when he was trying too hard. She took another step toward him, and I finally saw enough of her face to understand something I hadn't seen before. Her eyes were filled with fear. They were filled with heartbreak. Her lower lip was trembling, not from guilt, but from sorrow, so raw it didn't need words. She was holding something together up there, something fragile, something she was terrified I would break simply by existing in that space. "I'm going to climb up," I said, voice low, but unshakable. "No?" Her voice shattered. "John, please don't do this. You're not ready." "Not ready for what?" "Tell me who he is," I said again. She didn't answer, but the silence stretched in a way that felt like an answer. The kind of silence that carries history. The kind that weighs more than truth. My heart pounded. My lungs tightened. Every instinct told me to pull myself into the attic. Every instinct also told me that if I did that, something irreversible would happen. Something that would change the house, my wife, my son, and the shape in the dark forever. The attic dimmed for a moment as a cloud crossed the moon. Shadows thickened, and then the hidden figure whispered again, this time softer, more broken, more familiar. My wife's breath hitched. Her hand reached toward the darkness, fingers trembling, as if trying to catch a memory that kept slipping through. "It's okay," she whispered, voice cracking. "I'm right here. I'm right here with you." I had heard her use that exact sentence before only once, years ago, on a day none of us spoke about anymore. A day that pulled our family apart and stitched it together in uneven ways. A day of sirens and hospital lights and unanswered questions. The realization hit me slowly, painfully, like a bruise spreading under the skin. She wasn't protecting a stranger. She was protecting someone whose pain she already knew too well. I stepped 1 inch higher on the ladder. The attic boards shifted violently, not from my wife, from him. A sudden panicked movement, deeper in the shadows. My wife turned sharply, reaching toward him. "No, don't, it's okay, don't move." But the truth was already shifting, breathing, breaking its silence. And as the darkness trembled around the outline of the hidden figure, one thought settled over me like ice. Whoever was up there wasn't hiding from me. He had been hiding from the world. I didn't climb further. Not yet. The attic air pressed down on me like a hand on my chest. Steady but unyielding, warning me that one wrong move would shatter something that had been held together by threads too thin to see. My wife stood between me and the hidden figure. Her body curled slightly, like a shield, like she had done this before, many nights before, protecting someone who couldn't protect himself. His breathing had changed. Still soft but uneven now. Like the presence of another person. Me had pushed him into a corner he didn't know how to escape from. "Don't easy," she whispered, turning her head just enough for me to see the tear sliding down her cheek. "You're all right. I'm here. I'm here." Those weren't unvow words of a wife hiding a betrayal. They were the words of someone holding onto something fragile, or someone broken. My hand tightened on the ladder's rung, knuckles aching. I had never felt so close to a truth, and yet so far away from understanding it. "Tell me who he is," I said, again softer this time. My wife pressed her lips together, inhaling sharply, as if steadying her heart before it fell apart. The tear on her cheek caught the faint light trembling. She didn't turn toward me, but she didn't move away either. "It's not the moment," she whispered. "Not the moment, not the time, not here." Everything she said was shaped like a door half opened enough to see a silhouette, never enough to see the face. My mind reached backward, searching for memories, for clues, for nights that felt wrong, but I dismissed. There were more than I wanted to admit. Nights when the attic light flickered faintly, even though no one claimed to go up there. Nights when I thought I heard footsteps overhead, but convinced myself it was the house settling. Nights when my wife checked the thermostat at odd hours, always because it felt cold. Cold. There it was, that word again. The attic wasn't attached to any vent or insulation duct. It never should have felt cold. Not unless... I looked at the ladder beneath my feet. The wood was cold the moment I touched it. Not attic cold, not winter cold, body cold, as if someone had been using it. Often. Recently. My chest tightened. "Has he been here long?" I asked, quietly. My wife closed her eyes for a second, not to hide, but to gather herself. When she opened them again, they looked older, heavier, like she had been carrying this truth for so long, her heart forgot what it felt like to set it down. "Please, John," she whispered. "Not tonight." The attic board shifted again, this time closer. A slow, careful movement. Not approaching the ladder, but adjusting, like someone trying to stay in the shadows. Someone who had learned how to survive by staying unseen. Someone who wasn't sure if they were allowed to come forward or meant to run. My wife held out her hand in the darkness, fingers trembling. "It's okay," she said softly to him. "Don't be scared." Scared of me or scared of being seen? I didn't know which answer terrified me more. The attic was so still that I could hear the rhythm of 3 different breaths, my own tight, uneven, my wife's fragile, cracking around the edges, and his struggling shaky like a bird trying to fly with a broken wing. "Does our son know?" I whispered. My wife flinched. A tiny, sharp flinch like a bone pressed unexpectedly. She didn't speak. But the silence she gave me was louder than any confession. My mind spiraled. If our son knew, why was he silent? Why was he pale? Why did he recoil when she touched him? Why did he leave the house early? Why did he avoid us both? What had he seen? What had he heard? What truth had he chosen not to share? I felt something in the hallway shift, memory pressing against my ribs, trying to get out. The night I heard footsteps behind me. The camera footage showing a shape leaning toward me. The cold draft that brushed my back. The feeling of eyes on me in the dark. Whoever was in the attic now had been near me before. Close enough to touch me. Close enough to breathe behind me. Close enough to know every step I took in my own home. And for reasons I couldn't comprehend, my wife wasn't afraid of that. She was afraid of my reaction. "Have you been bringing him food?" I asked quietly, my throat tightening around the question. Another flinch. Her breath stuttered. Her fingers curled slightly. My chest sank. Water. Food. Blankets. Late-night whispers. The changed thermostat. The footsteps. The cold. Pieces that didn't make sense alone suddenly felt like fragments of a larger picture one I wasn't sure I was ready to assemble. Her voice cracked. "Please, don't make him face this tonight." "Face what?" I whispered. The attic air shivered around us. Not sound, movement. A hand from the darkness reached forward, just enough that I saw the faint outline of fingers trembling against the floorboards. Not reaching toward me, reaching toward her. My wife moved instantly, covering the hand gently with both of hers. "It's okay," she whispered, breaking. "I'm right here. I'm right here." My throat tightened. This wasn't betrayal, and it wasn't infidelity. It was something worse, something deeper, something that had been living inside my home like a wound we never treated. I felt the truth circling me, closing in, breathing on my neck, with the patience of something that had been waiting for years. My voice shook without my permission. "Tell me who he is." My wife bowed her head, holding his hand tightly, her tears dripping onto the attic boards. And finally, she whispered something so soft I almost missed it. "He used to be ours." My heart stopped. Used to be. Used to. And as the attic trembled under the weight of a grief I didn't yet understand, I realized, and the truth wasn't hiding from me. It was waiting for me to remember. He used to be ours. The sentence didn't strike me like thunder. It didn't explode. It didn't tear the air open. It sank, slow, heavy, like a stone dropped into deep water, disappearing beneath the surface long before the ripples reached me. My wife's voice trembled around the words, as if saying them aloud reopened something that had been closed, buried, sealed away under layers of nights she endured alone. "He used to be ours," she repeated, this time softer, like she was afraid the attic itself might break. My hand slipped slightly on the ladder rung. I steadied myself, but the world tilted all the same. Memories, old ones, the kind you never expect to see again, flickered around the edges of my mind like moths beating against glass. Ours. Used to be. I tried to speak, but nothing came. My throat tightened, as if the truth itself had wrapped around it. "What do you mean?" I managed. Her shoulders curled inward. She wasn't so much hiding as bracing, like someone preparing for an impact that had been delayed for years.
"Behind her."
The shadowed figure shifted again. Not toward me, toward her voice. The attic boards creaked softly beneath him, a sound that shouldn't have carried so much weight, yet felt like a memory dragging itself closer. My wife placed her hand protectively behind her, guiding him to stay still. Her fingers trembled as they touched his. The tenderness in that small gesture broke something in me, not from jealousy, from confusion, from grief, from the horrifying realization that I didn't understand my own house anymore. "Who?" My voice cracked. "Who is he?" Her breath stuttered. Not because she didn't know the answer, because she knew saying it would split something open between us. "You remember," she whispered. I shook my head. "I don't. I can't. But even as I said it, something inside me shivered. A memory, or the outline of one. Not a face, not a moment, just a feeling like a door I'd closed long ago, or like one someone else had closed for me. My wife turned slightly, her body positioned between us, as though protecting both sides, him From me from him, and the truth from all three of us. The figure in the shadows exhaled. Again, the sound, thin, strained, familiar, in a way that made my heart ache without knowing why. He shifted, and for a fraction of a second, the faintest sliver of moonlight brushed the edge of his arm, thin, trembling, covered in a blanket that didn't belong in an attic. "Why is he here?" I asked quietly. "Because he can't be anywhere else," she whispered. The sentence struck me harder than any confession could have. The attic felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker, the truth more suffocating. "Did you—" I swallowed. "Did you bring him here?" Her head dropped. "I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. She finally turned to look at me fully. Her eyes glistened in the dim light, not with guilt, not with deceit, but with years of silent suffering I had been too blind to notice. "John, you don't remember, do you?" she whispered. My stomach twisted. "Remember what?" Her lip trembled. The figure behind her whimpered softly, a sound so heartbreakingly fragile, it felt like it didn't belong to a grown man or a stranger. It belonged to someone hurt, someone wounded, someone who knew my wife's touch, but feared mine. She whispered, "You weren't ready back then, and I don't know if you're ready now." Back then, the words echoed in my chest, bouncing off places I didn't want to revisit. "I need you to tell me," I said, forcing my voice steady. "You need to see," she whispered back. The attic grew impossibly quiet. Even the air seemed to stop moving. And then for the first time, the shape behind her leaned forward slowly, not fully revealing himself, but shifting enough that I could sense depth size the outline of a body curled inward. A wounded posture, protective, fearful. My wife's hand moved instinctively, brushing his arm gently. "It's okay," she soothed. "You don't have to come out. Not yet." He whimpered again, a faint, fragile sound that made my chest tighten painfully. Something inside me cracked, not in anger, not in betrayal, but in recognition. Not full recognition, just the echo of one. Like hearing a melody you haven't heard in years yet, remembering every chord without knowing why. "What happened to him?" I whispered. Her shoulders trembled. "What did we forget?" She closed her eyes. "You didn't forget. You blocked it out." Blocked it out, my breath caught. Blocked it out. Like trauma. Like grief. Like something too big to live with, but too sacred to let die. My vision blurred around the edges, not from tears, from memory, fighting its way back into the present. "I don't understand," I said, "but part of me knew I was lying." "You will," she whispered, "but not here, not with him watching." Watching. The figure shifted again, a soft, strained sound, leaving him halfway between calling out and holding back. My wife cupped his face gently in her hands, her voice cracking. "It's okay. You're safe. He's not here to hurt you." Hurt. The word punched through me like a blade. "Why would I hurt him?" I whispered, horrified. She looked at me with eyes that held a decade of unsaid things. A decade of lonely nights, silent fears, and wounds no one saw. "Because you didn't know he survived." Survived? The word froze me to the bone. Cold, silent, final. My mouth went dry. Survived what? She looked at me, then at the darkness behind her, then at me again, breaking. And in a voice so soft it trembled through the attic, she whispered, "Survived us." The attic went still. My heartbeat stuttered. Something inside the shadows sobbed, quietly, painfully. The way someone cries, only when they recognize the person standing in front of them. And as the sound echoed through the beams above me, one truth settled in my chest, like a weight I wasn't ready to hold. Whoever he wasn't just connected to us. He was a part of us. I didn't remember standing up fully. I didn't remember pulling myself the last few inches into the attic or hearing the soft groan of the ladder beneath my weight. Maybe I didn't move at all. Maybe the attic waited for me to finally step into a truth I had been circling like a wounded animal, unable to look at its own reflection. My wife didn't stop me this time. She just stepped aside. Barely. Enough for breath to slip between us, but not enough for me to see him clearly. Her eyes told me everything and nothing. John, she whispered, her voice a thread stretched thin. Whatever happens, don't raise your voice. I'm not angry, I said. But that wasn't true. I wasn't angry at her. Or him. I was angry at the empty space inside my own memory. The place where something should have been, but wasn't. A place that felt torn out. My eyes adjusted to the dim attic light. Slowly, painfully, like the world didn't want me to see yet. The figure in the corner shifted again, trying to hide behind a stack of boxes that weren't large enough to hold him. He curled inward, arms tight around himself, knees pulled close, body shaking in a way that wasn't fear of me. It was fear of being seen, fear of being recognized, fear of remembering and being remembered. My wife took a step toward him, small, careful, and he flinched until he saw it was her. Only then did he relax, the tiniest amount, as if she were the only anchor he had in a world that kept trying to erase him. Her voice trembled as she whispered to him, "It's okay. He's here, but it's okay. You're safe." Safe from me. The thought sliced through me with a sharpness I didn't expect. I sank to one knee without meaning to. The attic boards, cold beneath me. My hand touched the floor for balance, but the wood felt wrong, not because of temperature, but because I suddenly realized how many nights someone had been kneeling here before me. Someone who used to be ours. My throat tightened. I tried to swallow. Nothing moved. "Please," I whispered, my voice cracking in a way I hadn't felt in years. "Let me see him." My wife hesitated, not because she didn't want me to see, because she wasn't sure he could bear it. She turned slightly, creating a half circle of space. Not enough to reveal him fully. Enough to show intention. Enough to show she wasn't locking him away from me. She was protecting him from something I hadn't remembered yet. "It's okay," she told him softly. The figure trembled harder. She leaned closer, her forehead almost touching his. "He doesn't remember," she whispered to him, her voice breaking. "He doesn't remember. He doesn't know. He's not here to hurt you." The words ripped through me, not because of what she was saying, but because of what she wasn't. "I would never hurt him," I whispered. The moment I said it, something happened. The figure lifted his head barely, just an inch, just enough for moonlight to brush the outline of his cheek, just enough for me to see a shape that punched the air out of my lungs. Not a face, not details, just a shape. But shape is enough when the heart remembers what the mind refuses to. I felt something old and buried inside me twist a deep, painful pull, like a memory trying to resurface. But hitting a wall that had been built too high too long ago, too deliberately. I blinked, my breath shook, my fingers dug into the attic floor. My wife reached for me instinctively, her hand hovering near my shoulder but not touching. She wasn't sure if she should catch me or let me fall. "John," she whispered, almost pleading. "Don't force it. Please. Not like this." Her voice broke again, and for a moment, I wasn't looking at her in the attic. I was looking at her on a night years ago, in a hallway bathed in emergency lights, her hands shaking her breath, rapid, her face pale with a kind of grief no one prepares for. A night I hadn't allowed myself to think about. A night I had placed somewhere so dark, in my mind the world above it collapsed. My vision blurred, my heart hammered. My jaw clenched so hard, my teeth hurt. The figure whimpered a small, broken sound that hit me like a memory I couldn't place. My wife whispered to him, "It's okay. He doesn't remember that night." That night. The phrase slammed into me like a blow. "What night?" I whispered. She covered her mouth with her hand, tears spilling freely now. Not the tears of guilt. The tears of someone who has carried someone else's pain inside her chest for too many years. Behind her, he shifted again. Small, fragile, curling in on himself, like someone terrified the moment I remembered would be the moment he disappeared again. The attic swayed around me. The air felt colder, thinner, older. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "Because you weren't ready," she said. And he wasn't either. I looked at the trembling outline of the boy, the man, the someone hiding just out of sight. "Let me see him," I whispered again, softer. "Please." The figure shifted slowly, painfully, as if the act of looking at me cost him something. My wife placed a hand on his arm. "Only if you want to," she whispered to him. "Only if you can." He made a sound, something barely there, and turned slightly. And in that microscopic turn, something inside me cracked open like an old wound that never healed properly. A memory, a flash, a voice, a moment, a night, a scream, a siren, a hand slipping from mine, a door closing, a shadow, a loss so devastating my mind had buried it with military precision. My breath left me. I didn't see his face. I didn't need to. My heart said before my eyes could. My wife whispered, voice trembling like a candle flame in a cold room. He wasn't supposed to survive, but he did. The attic froze. My soul did too. And the shape, the trembling shape whispered. Something broken. Something small. Something that cut through the years. Like a blade wrapped in sorrow. One single word. A name. My name. Dad? I don't remember climbing all the way into the attic. I don't remember the feeling of the ladder beneath my hands, or the sound of the floorboards shifting under my weight. It was as if the world shrank to the size of that shadow curled in the corner, trembling under the thin stripe of moonlight. The attic was quiet. Too quiet for how loud the truth felt in my chest. He had said the word softly, barely formed, barely held together, but it landed in me like the echo of a life I thought I had lost long ago. Dad. Not a scream. Not an accusation. Just a single fragile thread connecting the past to the present, pulling at something inside me I didn't know had survived. My wife lowered herself onto her knees beside him, her arms wrapping around his shoulders with a tenderness so instinctive it pulled another breath out of him, a shuddering, broken one. She rested her forehead against his temple and whispered something too soft for me to hear. He pressed into her touch, like he had done that 1,000 nights without me knowing. I wanted to move, I wanted to step closer, I wanted to speak, but every part of me felt rooted to the floor, as if my body knew that if I took one step forward, the truth would swallow the man I used to be and spit out someone I didn't recognize. My lungs ached from holding air I didn't realize I'd been holding. My wife looked back at me through tears that didn't hide the years she had carried this alone. Long nights, silent choices, slow grief. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She wasn't defending herself. She was simply showing me a truth she had protected until he was ready and until I was. Her voice cracked. "John, come sit." She didn't say come meet him. She didn't say come see him. She said come sit, as if all she wanted was for us to breathe the same air for the first time in years. My legs felt numb as I moved closer. The cold of the attic seeped through my knees as I lowered myself down, leaving a careful space between us, not out of fear, but respect. The kind of respect you offer someone who has lived through something you didn't see, because you couldn't. He didn't look at me at first. His chin tucked into his chest body curled inward, like he was still trying to hide from a world that had once taken everything from him. My wife rubbed his back slowly, her hand moving in circles meant to steady him, meant to steady herself. I swallowed hard. My voice wasn't ready. But some things don't wait for readiness. "It's okay," I whispered, barely audible. "I'm here." He flinched, not away from me, toward me, as if the sound of my voice pulled something loose inside him he had been holding tight for too long. A small sound escaped him, half breath, half cry, and he reached blindly toward my wife, as if grounding himself. His fingers curled into her sleeve, gripping tightly. She placed her other hand over his and whispered, "You're safe. You're safe. He's here. He's really here." Her words were meant for him, but they tore something open in me too, because the truth was simple, brutal, and sharp. I'd been gone long before I realized something was missing. Not physically, not by choice, but gone. In the way a mind protects itself when the heart is too broken to bear the whole picture. Something inside me cracked, silent but deep. The kind of crack you only feel once in a lifetime, when grief and recognition collide so hard they leave you with nothing but breath and shaking hands. "Hey," I whispered again, softer than before. "You don't have to be afraid of me." He lifted his head an inch, just enough for me to see the outline of his jaw, the trembling shape of his mouth, the shadow of someone who had been living between presence and absence for too long. My wife brushed his cheek gently. "He hears you," she whispered. I nodded, unable to trust my own voice. Minutes passed. Or hours. Time dissolved in that small corner of the attic, where the three of us breathed through a truth too heavy to carry, but too sacred to drop. He leaned slightly forward, his body trying again to bridge the small distance between us. He didn't reach fully. He didn't move with confidence. He simply tilted like someone drawn by instinct rather than memory. My chest tightened. He wasn't coming to me because he remembered me. He was coming to me because some part of him still trusted the man I used to be. And maybe that was enough. Or maybe it was all I had. Very slowly, I extended my hand toward the floor. Palm open, not inviting, not demanding, simply there, present, quiet, waiting, the way a father waits for a child who has lived too long in the dark. The silence thickened. He stared at my hand body, trembling. My wife whispered, "Only if you want to." His fingers, fragile, shaking, lifted from his lap, hovered in the air, and then, barely, just barely, touched mine. The contact was so light it felt like memory brushing skin. But it was real. And it broke me open in a way no scream ever could. I didn't cry, not loudly, not visibly, just a single breath that left my chest as if it had been trapped there for years. He didn't pull away. He didn't look up. He just held on to that one point of connection like it was something he had been searching for in the dark. My wife exhaled shakily, the sound of someone who had been holding the world together with her bare hands, finally letting go. And in that attic, under the slow breath of moonlight, with dust floating like memory around us, I felt everything. Grief, loss, guilt, love, recognition, all colliding quietly in my chest. I tightened my fingers around his gently, carefully, as if the world depended on the softness of that touch. And in that moment, that fragile, wordless moment, I understood something with absolute clarity. Some truths don't return to destroy you. They return to give you one last chance to hold what you once lost. I drew a slow breath, steadying myself. And in the quietest voice I had left, I whispered, "I'm here now, and I won't leave again." He didn't answer, but he leaned closer. And sometimes that's all the forgiveness we get.